If you ever struggled with social anxiety or shyness, as most people call it, this one's for you. And it's a funny thing because since I was remembering my struggles with social anxiety, with feeling a bit shy at times, this might be the hardest video that I ever made because I was in that mental state of remembering how I felt at that time. And of course, there are times in which I still get a bit of that, but it's much, 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 much better. So I struggled to remember that back in the day, eye contact was a thing that I used to struggle with. So I'd had to practice all of those grandpa things a lot and consciously so that I would, talking to people, that I would look into their eyes. So you have all of those little tricks that you can do, like you can focus on just one eye because we get nervous about, should I look at the left eye, should I look at the right eye? So you can focus on only one of the eyes, or you can focus here on the third eye spot right in the middle of the forehead. And there's also in some books that you can read about social interaction or body language. They make this little triangle in your head. So if you want to be in equal terms or dominant to the person, you should look at this triangle. And if you look on this triangle, you're being a bit more submissive, which is funny to think about. I have studied about these things. Also, having a firm handshake is a very important one, though that one was probably the first one that I ever worked on, because that feeling of someone grappling your hand strongly and you're not grappling it back, it's very weird, especially for a man. But actually I think it's better than the other hand of this, when the person just kind of gives their hand like this and it's like a dead hand, it's like a dead fish. Especially when the person has sweaty palms. That's terrible. And then the hardest of this first tier would be having a firm voice. And that is one that I struggle with time to time as well, even today, because the firmness of your voice has a lot to do with your mental state, with your emotional state at the time. So it's something that it's harder to fake. It's harder to convey that you're calm when you're not with your voice. And it takes more work to do, but it can be done. You see actors doing it all the time, and they're the specialists in all of this, in all of body language, and all of conveying emotion. But back to getting over social anxiety and why it's so important when you have this kind of issue. And speaking as someone that has struggled with this through a lot of my life, and to be honest, it's a lifelong journey, and there are things that you'll probably have to work on for the rest of your life, and that's totally fine. But the main thing of getting over this is that you free up so much emotional bandwidth and mental bandwidth in your head when you stop thinking consciously and deliberately about all of the possible interactions, all of the possible outcomes of every interaction. So for instance, here are some things that used to make me anxious, and they don't anymore, or usually they don't, at least. So first of all, that I noted down here, asking for the bill at a restaurant, or asking for anything at a restaurant, really, talking to the waiter. I know it's kind of ridiculous to feel anxious about talking to a waiter or talking to a sales rep at a store. But yeah, that was me. That was me not so long ago, maybe a few years ago. I would still have this. And yeah, it sucks. Imagine if you can't even talk to the waiter, if you can even ask for the bill. What are you going to be able to? How will you be able to step up for yourself when you really need it? Then another one, picking up the phone. And this one, to be honest, still does get me a little anxious at times. And this comes from childhood. And I don't know if I should be saying that out loud here, but it probably comes from childhood when my mom, because of phone at home, of course, they would never call me. They wouldn't be calling the child, right? So usually it was for my mom or dad, and many times my mom would be like, "Oh, tell them that I'm not here." For instance, if it was her aunt that was calling and she didn't want to talk to her because of accountability issues, because there was something that her aunt had asked her to do, or that she knew that she was going to ask her and she didn't want to talk about that at that time. And my mom has always struggled with saying no. And then she would be like, "Oh, tell her that I'm in the shower, or tell her that I'm not here," so that she could prepare to talk to her later and call her later herself. So that kind of thing. And that got me anxious about answering the phone, which is a bit ridiculous, I know, but it did. Also, talking in groups that I wasn't totally comfortable with, because here's the thing, when you are a bit more introverted or a bit more social anxious, you don't get comfortable with a group from the get-go. You sort of need to get into the groove and understand what are the social dynamics of that group, who are the leaders, who are the people that are more outgoing, who are the people that speak the most, what they like, what they don't like. So you kind of need a little bit of time to figure that out. While whereas a more extroverted person might just get go and just speak their mind from the get-go. And since you are already more in your head, you might get that vision that those people that do that, those people that speak more from the get-go, they're better simply at speaking, or they're more interesting. That's a problem with people who are introverted or who have social anxiety as well, that they think that what they have to say is not interesting enough for other people, which is funny in a sense, because conversely, you kind of can get interested in anything that another person has to say, at least to keep the conversation going, because you want them to speak the most and you don't want to talk that much. Also, naturally, it goes without saying hi to strangers, especially, for instance, in a network setting, in a network event. It can pay off a lot if you can say hello to strangers and make some small talk. And you really have a hard time with small talk when you have social anxiety. So getting over it, like I said in the beginning, it freed up so much mental bandwidth. And by no means am I perfect with it, but anyways, it has helped me a lot. So some of the things that I did to get over this: first of all, realizing there's no problem in being a bit more silent at times. You need to realize that you have intrinsic value, so you don't need to care that much about what other people are going to think of you and if they're going to judge you, because I'm sure that it's something that passes through your mind at times. There are some exercises you can do. For instance, going up to people and saying hello, doing the things that you think, the things that make you anxious, doing them deliberately. So if for you it's talking to the waiter, try to spark some conversation with the waiter or with the girl at the register at Starbucks or whatever it is. Also, you can, something that I already did, and I still try to make it a habit. Whenever you go to a group, you make a point of saying hello to all of them. So you go person by person and say, hello Jane, hello Mark, hello Peter. So you go person to person. You don't just do that hi group kind of thing, that kind of awkward motion like hello. No, you go person to person, and this is great as well because you can focus on each one and practice handshake, eye contact, or maybe if it's a hugging place or a kiss on the cheek kind of place where you live in your culture. So you focus on doing that to all of them, and instead of doing that awkward hi to 10 people, you can practice saying hello individually to 10 people at a time, so you will blast off in your development. Another thing that you can do, well, this one is a good one. You can also try to speak up more. So if going on a meeting at work, for instance, you have a struggle with speaking up, maybe try to speak up more in instances in which you didn't actually need to speak up. So for instance, maybe ask the dumb questions. Things that you might think are obvious, and for you they might be obvious, but for other people they might not be. So ask the dumb questions. Don't be afraid of sounding dumb, of sounding like you don't know what you're talking about, because that's also one of the great root causes of why you're anxious in the first place. You think you need to speak all of those Einstein-worthy messages, all of those things that only a genius could be talking about. And then of course you're gonna miss out on a lot of opportunities to speak, a lot of opportunities to be heard, and there might be things that you think are dumb but other people will think are smart. So don't miss out on that. Don't miss out on speaking when you can. Also realize that you have some secret powers because you are already used to listening, and that's something most people aren't actually. They are not listening. Or better yet, you have a secret power in disguise that you need to learn how to muster. Because if you are too much in your mind thinking, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? You won't be able to listen properly. So get rid of that what I'm going to say and focus on the present moment. Focus on what the person or the people are saying. Focus on the present moment. Focus on the vibe that they're conveying, on how they're saying it, their emotion, their body language. And by doing this, you'll be able also to listen to the things that are left unsaid, which is very useful in a business situation, especially in a negotiation setting. And this is something that I learned a lot working with real estate, because there are many things that people leave unsaid, or things that people, they might not even be clearly conscious of their real intentions or of the possibilities in a negotiation. So if you are listening to those little cues, you might be able to get a better outcome with a negotiation. So going back to the beginning of this video and how you can appear calm despite struggling with social anxiety, what I have to say to you in a nutshell basically is realize that you have intrinsic value, so you don't need to worry that much about appearing smart or appearing that you're worthy. So stop being a wimp and trust your gut, trust yourself, your instincts. After that, just go on some exposure therapy. So if you're afraid of putting out a video, put out a video. If you're afraid of calling someone on the telephone, call someone on the telephone. If you're afraid of asking for something at a restaurant, go to a restaurant and ask for something. And ask for something obnoxious or something you think is obnoxious, because it might not be. And if you are socially anxious, you tend to have a threshold for obnoxiousness that's about this big, but other people have one that's this big. So maybe if you ask for this, you will get it, and then you'll see that maybe you should be expanding your limits daily. So do this, go on your exposure therapy, and later tell me how it went. I want to know. And if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, just talk to me, DM me. I'll leave the link for my X account, or you can also comment here on YouTube. And yeah, let's set up a meeting, man. Let's call. Let's talk about how you can apply this to your life, how you can make your world a better place by being more confident. And that's it, man. Thank you for coming. Let's go